Hello, everybody. This is I don't know if I can call it an emergency live stream. I don't like the term emergency live stream, but I do know that today was quite the eventful day, and it's still far from over. There is still a lot that's going to happen within the next few hours. It's going to be difficult for some, emotional for some, fulfilling for others. I want to just ask you, as I know that more people will be watching today, there will be more reactions in the chat. There's going to be a lot of comments. I just want to say, please keep it civilized. We can all agree to disagree in a civilized manner, as I know that today's situation will be viewed very differently. So, thank you, everybody, for joining me today. Again, the circumstances are quite extreme, so I understand if some of you are more excited than usual. As always, please click on the like button, and if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so. It really helps us a lot to grow an audience, and it's great to be able to come on here and interact with you. So, before I start to read the comments, I wanted to just lay out all the facts for some people who may have just tuned in right now, may have just woken up because they're in LA or somewhere, and then I'll get to all the reactions, and you guys can just let it rip in a civilized manner. Okay, so I think. First of all, today's events were completely unexpected because most media outlets seem to just scrutinize the possibility of Mourinho departing the club with immediate effect. Most newspapers seem to agree that Roma would not sack him because it would be too costly for them, and seem to agree that Roma will plan something in the summer and just stick to Mourinho until the end of the season. Well, that was not the case. So today's news, as always, with Roma, with Friedkins, the news always come directly from the club. Once the decision is made, the decision is conveyed officially through the club's channels, and so first thing in the morning around 9 a.m. I start to check the morning press, and boom, there it is. Roma announced Mourinho is leaving the club with immediate effect. It's a sacking. Mourinho did not file resignation. Mourinho was sacked by Roma. The club felt that the season was derailing, and there was still room for improvement. And so afterwards, we have the first name on the list is Daniele De Rossi to replace Mourinho. Now, there is a lot of skepticism regarding this decision, and we will get to it later. So I'll try to make up for all the comments that I'm seeing right now pop up in the chat. So if you feel a certain way about De Rossi returning, please let me know. And so De Rossi, first name on the list. The matter is done within a few hours. As always, Roma would not have sacked Mourinho had they not had any previous contact with De Rossi. That was the case around 3 or 4 hours later. Once Mourinho and his staff went to Trigoria to empty their lockers, empty their offices, they made way immediately for De Rossi. De Rossi right now is at Trigoria, and in about an hour, he will begin his first training session as a Roma coach. De Rossi's only previous coaching experience goes back to Spal last season. Pretty short-lived experience. Probably most famous for calling up Raja Nainggolan going there, and then shortly thereafter, De Rossi was gone. So we've appointed a legend in the place of perhaps by status our greatest manager, right? So we appointed De Rossi, basically a newbie, somebody who hasn't even coached youth teams. He's got all the licenses needed. He's studied. He's been part of Roberto Mancini's staff with Italy. He had that brief experience in Serie B, but that's about it. That's De Rossi's resume at this moment. We see Roma sit ninth in the table. They have 29 points in 20 games. That is their worst points record since 2002 2003 at this point in the season. That was back when Fabio Capello was still coach of AS Roma. So those are the facts. De Rossi asked, according to Di Marzio of Sky Sport, De Rossi even asked Tiago Pinto to stick around for a few months until the end of the season. I guess that came from just the fact that he needs some support from a managerial standpoint from somebody in Roma's upper management. Roma are yet to name a sporting director. That's also something that's going on behind the scenes. So those are the facts. De Rossi and his staff are right now at Trigoria. They're signing all the necessary documents and getting ready to begin training. And they will be facing Hellas Verona in a few days' time with around 8 players missing. So as you can tell, the circumstances are very bizarre. And I will now get to the famous chat. And so, guys, any thoughts, any questions, please write it down in the chat, and I'll try to go back to it. Let's see. Hello, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Ju. Thank you to all the patrons who joined me here today. If you would like to be a patron for the show, you can be a patron for the show by going to patreon.com/Roma Press and support us there. Hi, Andy. Didn't expect the sack of Mourinho right now, but I wonder if he lost the dressing room. Now, that's the first question probably that comes to mind, right? When there is when there is something like this, when something like this occurs, especially with Mourinho again at Roma, it always felt like he had something up his sleeve, and the management trusted him, and the ownership trusted him. At least there was that sense that, hey, he is Mourinho after all. I think majority of us thought that way, given what we've seen in previous years. In previous years, there's also been moments like this. A slump here, a slump there, a string of losses. So there can be speculation regarding the dressing room. Now, from my perspective, what I see on the pitch is players that are unable to react and respond to the pitch. So if you're a player, such as a player that is on the pitch for Roma and that behind the scenes to the media says, well, I'm all for Mourinho. Mourinho is very important to me. Well, that's great, but unless you show that to me, the attitude on the pitch, and you actually respond on the pitch, then those words are meaningless to me. And to me, it felt like that. It felt like we just got to a place where Roma were helpless. Now, there's a difference between saying that and saying Mourinho needed to be sacked at this moment in time. I know that our good friend Filippo Biafra of Il Tempo, and I cite him here because I trust him. Always trust Filippo Biafra, one of the few 100% reliable journalists. Filippo Biafra reported earlier today on the radio that that there was a batch of players, mostly non-Italian players of the team, who personally complained to Ryan Friedkin, so Vice President Ryan Friedkin, about the way they felt on the pitch. Given the lack of results in recent weeks, a batch of players went up to Ryan Friedkin, who is regularly at Trigoria. Unlike his father, who travels a lot for business, Ryan Friedkin, for the majority of the year, is in Rome and also at Trigoria, watching over the team's training sessions. According to Biafra, some players went up to Ryan Friedkin and complained about how the team felt and looked on the pitch. So if that is true, and I do believe that is true, because when Biafra reports it, it means it comes from something, then that's something that we've seen in the past. We've seen it with Fonseca. We've seen it with Di Francesco. It's natural. Unfortunately, it's part of football. It's happened everywhere, and that's why it's so rare to see managers last so long, because there is a bond that eventually, at some point in time, can break. And that, I think, if the dressing room was not there, if my impression of the team looking helpless on the team is founded on something, then a decision like this, I'm not saying is justified, because I never think that it's justified unless you're, I don't know, sinking to relegation, whereas you should be competing for the Scudetto. But still, there's something there. 10 million budget, signed free agent, club reject, injury prone, and expect Champions League football. Well, Satish, I understand where you're coming from, because I think a lot of people have that. In this case, I don't even think that the reason for this, for in this instance, I don't think the reason is that the expectations is Champions League football. The expectations is to get results, which Roma have not been doing. Because at the end of the day, if you look objectively at 29 points in 20 games, that is a horrific result. So from a results-based perspective, it's bad. Now, you may argue whether the expectations really was Champions League football and blah, blah, blah. But if I'm the president of Roma and I'm looking at the team and I'm seeing that Roma are just 1 point ahead of Torino mid-season and still with a lot to play for, now that is very worrying. So, but I understand also, that's why I'm saying let's keep it civilized, because there's a little bit of truth everywhere. So if I understand if you're unhappy with how Roma handled the situation, but also the framework within Mourinho had to work. Personally, I think we can all agree that a cycle with Mourinho came to an end in Budapest. And Budapest should have been the end for Mourinho at Roma, and he felt it that way. Remember, when he loses that final, he gathers the players around him and he says to them, I'm staying, but I'm staying here for you. And it felt like that was a decision that he forced upon himself in that instance. That had it ended differently, had Budapest ended in a win for Roma, that would have been it for Mourinho. He would have left Roma like a hero, 2 European trophies. The team celebrated all over Europe. Great. That was not the case. It did not happen. And I think Mourinho failed to recognize the moment he instead of trusting his instinct, he did something that went against his instinct. And Roma, on the other hand, should have realized that you can't hope to build on that loss. And they failed to build on that loss. They failed to build on that defeat. A lot of their decisions after that loss were completely wrong, and they failed to realize what made those previous teams under Mourinho special. So the natural end to Mourinho's tenure should have happened in at the end of May. That was not the case, and I think honestly this is quite the sad ending for a manager who gave us so much and for a club that gave him so much in a moment where Mourinho really felt like, after Tottenham, it really felt it felt like nobody would take a chance on him in that particular instance. And he met a team that he fell in love with. The fans fell in love with him. It was like a perfect marriage. That first trophy, if there ever was a coach who could have gifted Roma their first European trophy, it was Mourinho. It was written in the stars. And then unfortunately Budapest sort of scratched that, and I think it continued on, and it shouldn't have. So this doesn't sit right with me as well. So when we lose against Verona, who are we going to blame? Nothing else will happen now. Well, it's pretty evident that against Verona you will be playing without say Mancini, without Cristante. You're playing without all the players that are still injured, that are still on away on international duty. So Daniele De Rossi's job right now is very, very difficult. Given this being really his first major job, it's unbelievably difficult. But nothing ends, guys. I just want to say this, that no matter how you look at this situation, it doesn't end. It doesn't end for Mourinho. Mourinho is still going to have a lot going on in his career, and it doesn't end for Roma. It may change, things may change, but De Rossi's appointment will be valid until June. There is no option to extend his contract as suggested earlier on by the media. There is no option. So Mourinho is a temporary appointment, which gives Roma time to secure a sporting director and then plan ahead. And that's something they have to do as soon as possible. You cannot. Also, I want to also add, Mourinho by himself was a great communicator. He was your PR person. He was the guy calling up players. He was the guy going up to the media, fighting for Roma in front of the media, for better or worse. Again, you can argue you may have disliked that part about him. Fine. But he was, through his experience, through his pedigree, he was able to withstand a lot. I'm not sure if Daniele De Rossi can. So what I'm saying is, if you're Roma, now you really need to show some support to Daniele De Rossi. This is going to be a guy who's going to come into a really scary situation, and the general manager is on his way out. The ownership are all looking to hire somebody that is still not there, maybe weeks away, who knows. So if you're Daniele De Rossi, you need a person of support. You need somebody who's right next to you, ready to take over if there is something to say to the media, if there is something to say to the referees. There needs to be some backing, because it's not the same as having Mourinho. Mourinho by himself, he handled it for 2 years. This year he was a bit shaky. He refused oftentimes to do post-match media appearances. He didn't want to engage anymore. And I understand that. He asked a number of times to have a bit more presence from the club. Roma were reluctant in fulfilling that. And I just don't think that will work with De Rossi. De Rossi will need backing. So let's see. It's sad to see Jose leave, but the show must go on. Everybody must give full support to Daniele and believe in him. Sempre Forza Roma. Yeah, absolutely. Who do you think we will get in the summer as next coach? Well, today the media reports were about Antonio Conte. I don't know how true that can be. Obviously, I was very skeptical when initial reports talked about Antonio Conte as a mid-season appointment, because Antonio Conte does not join a team mid-season. He's made that clear enough. It hurts to hear about the what if of a Europa League win. It had so much importance. Oh, that night is unbelievably important. And like the Champions League semifinal, it's a beautiful moment, because you see a team really rally around the coach after the game, and sort of try and make sense of a painful loss. But it also fools you into believing in something that this team is not. And I think Roma overestimated that team yesterday. They overestimated the thought of what happens, of what can happen later, what they can achieve, what is their objective, what are their ambitions. They overestimated that. They made a number of mistakes because they underestimated the importance of somebody like Nemanja Matic. They failed to recognize what made their defense tick last season. With Chris Smalling out, the whole defense lost its stability. And they continue to build around a core that maybe has given enough. Maybe the likes of Pellegrini and Cristante are not the way forward. I'm not saying that. I'm saying these are considerations that you as a club have to make when you reach a Europa League final. You lose it, and you have to understand, where are we going from here. So the main thing this tells me is that they were never going to extend Mourinho. Now they had to determine what made best business sense. Well, I think they were very reluctant to extend Mourinho, simply because Mourinho, I don't think, had clarified his plans prior to, say, December. Right? We lose against Bologna. That's when Mourinho publicly announces that he wants to continue with Roma. Until then, there had been no contact. John from my colleague John from Roma Press also reported on it, that there had been no contact between the agents of Mourinho and Roma as far as November, December. So there was, on both sides, it seemed like, what do we do? And I think in with on the end of the Friedkins, what won out is paying attention to the team's results. And the team's results, it's undeniable, guys. Whatever faction you represent, whatever faction you are behind, they were not good enough. Now you may argue that the team is not good enough. It's fine, but at the end of the day, coach and team, it's one big thing, right? So everybody's has to be held accountable. Minutes ago, Paulo Dybala and Leandro Paredes, who arrived for training at Trigoria, they were greeted by fans who said, "Hey, now without Mourinho, you have no more excuses." And it's only right. It's the same. Unfortunately, the same thing happened in 2018, 2019, right? With Di Francesco, he leaves. Who do you hire in that moment? Claudio Ranieri. Why? Because he's the only coach willing to step into that reality at that moment in time. It's the same thing right now. It's just that you are bringing in somebody who's very inexperienced. Friedkin made correct decision by firing Mourinho, but choosing De Rossi is the problem. Well, again, I think the circumstances here are so extreme that you are never going to find a long-term replacement for Mourinho at this point in time. So if you think sacking him is the correct decision at this moment in time, you also have to take the good and the bad. You have to also take into account that, for example, Igor Tudor, so probably the only high-profile manager out there that you can bet on long-term, would not be interested to walk into this situation. You have no sporting director. You have a number of players who need to be sold. You have a number of players who are here on loan until the end of the season. You have no plans for the future. You are yet to determine what you want to do this summer. This was a lost cause for any coach. So Daniele De Rossi coming back is very romantic, because we thought it would happen in the future. We just didn't expect it to happen so soon. But the fact is, if you sack Mourinho now, the options to replace him long term are extremely limited, perhaps impossible. Yes, in retrospect, the Europa League final loss was an Icarus moment. Flew so close to the sun and didn't see the feathers were melting away and we're slowly losing altitude. That's brilliant. Brilliantly said. It really was. It was a moment where Roma should have had a great instance of clarity. They should have seen through that loss. They should have said, listen, it's bad. We are hurting, but this is what we want to do to improve. Instead, they said, let's see if we can stretch this. Let's see if we can get lucky enough. Unfortunately, that was not the case. It did not happen. It didn't pan out. Hiring Daniele De Rossi is a low risk PR move. That's it. Well, it can be a high risk if it doesn't work out. It's a very high risk move. I'm in the faction that is pushing for a new hair product for Andy. Thank you so much, Alec. Always paying compliments for my hair. Michael, do you see Roma going into total rebuild mode? My apologies if you already answered this joining late. No, absolutely, Michael. Thank you. And it's no problem if you guys have some questions that can be repetitive. It's fine. I do see Roma going into rebuild mode because the wage bill is horrendous. And the wage bill is horrendous now because the results are just not there. You cannot be the third most expensive roster in the league and have only 29 points to show in 20 games. That is unacceptable. And you have teams like Monza and Bologna and even Torino, who, I mean, for the majority of the season have been outperforming you. That's scary. That's the scary realization that I think really got to the Friedkins. I do agree. De Rossi is a PR move to sort of calm the waters, try to get the fans still on their side, right? Because, hey, Mourinho filled out the stadium. He sold it out. His presence was very important to the majority of home fans. So any other coach, except for Daniele De Rossi, would have seen the Olympico attendance drop drastically. Not De Rossi. De Rossi, even if fans are against this move, even if fans don't like the fact that he is being tasked with such an important job so early on, they will still show up for him. That is something that I'm sure of. But I do think that appointing De Rossi until the end of the season means one thing, that you're going to make an important appointment in the summer. If you hire a sporting director now and you appoint somebody long term in the summer, it means that you are going rebuild mode. Roma will be slashing those wages. I definitely see that happening because right now they are paying the price of having a lot of players who make a lot of money but don't play. So guys like Chris Smalling, Renato Sanchez, Spinazzola. I mean, right there you have what 12 million in wages. So right there, that's 12 million. So imagine. The team will destroy Verona. We'll see midfielders playing with freedom, unafraid to receive and turn with the ball. Best thing that could have happened getting rid of Mourinho. Okay, Crystal, I know your comments from some of our videos. So you know, very extreme viewpoint. I doubt that the turnaround can be so quick. I hope it is. I hope that this team responds well to disappointment. And I do think that it's still going to be important. Emotionally, it's going to be important. That transition from having, for example, somebody like Cristante or Mancini, guys that were trusted by Mourinho, to see Mourinho gone, but then have the figure of Daniele De Rossi, somebody they've worked with previously, either at the club or with the national team. That is very important to keep the focus. The focus was not there over the last weeks. The focus is not there. And Filippo Biafora's report, which I mentioned earlier on, of a batch of players not being convinced of what Mourinho was doing when he was putting them on the pitch, just shows that there was something. There were cracks, and that's why I was very worried by his recent press conference, the one he did right before Milan, and the one that shall be his last appearance for Roma, because I thought, hey, here's a man who seems helpless, who feels like he can do much more with this team. And again, you can argue in favor or against that. You can say, hey, there is more to be done with these players, or you can argue just not good enough. So, guys, I'm very happy that we have such a record-breaking audience because hey, today is a very eventful day. I appreciate everybody tuning in. It would mean a lot if you could just click on the like button so that we can get even more people involved. That'd be nice. So if you haven't already, click the like. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, this is where you can find all episodes of the Roma Press podcast on video format. And you can also find these live streams. I usually schedule them a few hours in advance. So if you click on the little notification button, you'll get notified anytime I schedule them. I thought De Rossi would deny this job until he felt ready. What is this? This feels like a panic. Sacking and Pinto leaving makes this all even worse. Is this like what Juve did with Pirlo? Well, it's not, because Pirlo arguably had a little bit more experience than De Rossi. But Pirlo was long term for Juve. De Rossi is not, and De Rossi knows it. He knows the situation. And De Rossi was here when in 2018, 2019, he sees Claudio Ranieri reappear in an emergency situation. He was here. That was his last season for Roma. He retired shortly afterwards. So he knows what the situation is. He knows that this is a moment of need. And yes, you can say this is a panic reaction and a PR move to keep everybody still more or less happy, or at least if not happy, in support, because nobody's going to turn their back on Daniele De Rossi. As long as De Rossi is on the bench, the fans will continue to support. So let's see. I have to say I'm gutted, really. The love and symbiosis between the city and manager was so unique. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I really fail to recall a time where there was this much connection between coach and fans. What Mourinho did for Roma was amazing in and of itself off the pitch. Just by looking at the dynamic, he was, first of all, he was taken aback by how fans just graciously welcomed him, and recognized his status as the greatest manager to walk through the gates of Trigoria, looking at his career, looking at his pedigree. And then he took it to another level. The way he represented these colors on several occasions, also obviously in those European finals, it's something that put him above, head and above everybody else in terms of recent managers. I just don't think there's been a lot of managers who were able to read the room so well like Mourinho. Mourinho was tapped into this reality since day one, and that made the difference. So you can argue that even when things were going bad on the pitch, that compensated. And it compensated, and it went on for those 2 years, even in those difficult moments. That support, the fact that he would go under the Curva Sud and applaud the fans, and the fans would give him a standing ovation even after a defeat, he did not take that for granted, and Roma fans did not take that for granted. So I think that was something that kept the team going. This season, it did not. It was not enough. I felt like even there were cracks. The support was undeniable all season long, but eventually the results get to you. And if the team fails to embody what the manager wants to convey to them, then you got a recipe for disaster. I am from India, started following Roma due to Mourinho, fell in love with the passionate fans, but now with Jose gone, time to leave. I understand. I don't think you're the only one. Now that Mourinho leaves, will the referees change their stance on Roma? No, I don't think so. If you are new to this, go back to Fonseca getting a red card against Cagliari. Go back to God knows how long. So see what happened to see what happened to Manchester United and Tottenham with all the resources they have, and see what will happen to Roma with no resources. Oh, are you putting a curse on us? I mean, the reality is the reality. And again, Roma stays. Whatever happens, the club stays. So I understand that people want to follow a manager, and that's totally fine by me. But for us who cheer for a football club, the club stays no matter who goes through it. So sacking Mourinho, while he has the support of fans and the Curva Sud, risks the club to go the way Pallotta did, even if Daniele De Rossi shields as a PR move. Well, I think I honestly think if you start turning on the club right now, I want to keep it civilized, but I don't think it would be a good thing to do right now. The Friedkins have invested almost over 900 million euros into the club. They took the club in a really difficult moment, and they've given you the possibility of seeing the likes of Mourinho and Dybala, Lukaku, whatever your stance is. They've contributed to that. You can argue that it's all Mourinho. Well, Mourinho's there in the first place for a reason. To just dismiss this so quickly for this, things will turn out. Nothing ends. Again, you change, you evolve as a club. Roma have to learn their lessons. They have to operate more smartly. They have to be able to navigate all the restrictions. They will face new restrictions, which will then eventually be lifted. Who knows? Maybe you qualify for Champions League football. Maybe you don't qualify for Europe at all. It doesn't mean that everything's ending. There is life after Mourinho. There is life after De Rossi. It goes on. I blame Anthony Taylor. Well, don't we all? don't we all? It was really bad. What Anthony Taylor did was deprive us of a really fairy tale ending to the whole Mourinho tenure. I think that would have been so magnificent to see Mourinho go back to Rome, ride the bus one more time with the Europa League trophy, see the fans celebrate, see the city explode the way it did on the day that we went back with the Conference League trophy. Unfortunately, Anthony Taylor chose to be a prick. Joseph, wage bill needs to be reduced to 70 million a year from the 110 million. Big job by the next sporting director. Oh, it's huge. And already this is already an improvement over what we had in 2021, because in 2021 we had over 70 players under contract, and you had guys like Alessio Riccardi costing you $1 million a season. So it's it's really but that's what I'm saying. The club evolves because you have to learn your lessons. So the Mourinho tenure, in my opinion, it's still a success despite the poor league record. The league record is not good, but if you look back at these years, I'm sure that people will look back on them the way they do when they look back at the years of Fabio Capello. They remember that these things matter in the long run, Um, but as a club, you also have to face a reality that may have been unsustainable with Mourinho here, despite him saying a number of times that he would be willing to work with younger players to see this team, change shape, to see less players, less veteran players, less players on loan, more guys from the youth sector, more, prospects who may not give you an immediate response, but are a good long-term option. I don't know how it would have been able to be sustainable for Mourinho in the long run. I just don't know. So as a club, maybe now you change strategy, and that's fine too. The Roma changed strategy by going from Fonseca to Mourinho. Obviously, it's night and day. So again, you move on. You keep going. Do you think De Rossi will use Primavera players? Well, it depends on the situation. I think right now De Rossi will want to have the full support of the most important players in the team, and he'll try and build on that. Um, he'll try to. Hey, he's gonna meet Brian Cristante, the guy who he said he wishes he had 100 players like him, right? So no, it's important at this moment in time for everybody in the locker room to really rally around De Rossi. De Rossi is not that much older than Nemanja Matic was last year. Okay, so um, he's gonna be like a teammate of theirs, and the team has to rally around him because they have to know the reality that he comes from, and the reality that he comes from is being a staff member for the Italian national team, more or less. That's his experience right there. So. I don't believe De Rossi will fill the stadium. Does anyone remember when the Tifosi hung mannequin of him and Raja in the streets? No, but Nino, this is a very particular situation. Here, anybody who would have come in would have had the support. De Rossi being here so early on and him becoming the manager of Roma 4 years after retiring is huge. It's huge, especially given the circumstances now of a team that is low on confidence, technically questionable, and in a bad position in the league table. This is a situation that requires De Rossi to be supported, and I'm pretty sure that he will be. He will get the backing. How horrific is Jose Mawar's contract looking right now? Well, I actually think that Hussein Mawar is still a player who can give you a lot. So I would not write off somebody like Awar because hey, maybe he comes back from AFCON and maybe De Rossi finds a way to involve him more. I think Hussein Mawar right now is the least of our problems, Adam. Afshin, after spending a ton, will not achieve trophy anytime soon. Well, thank you and good luck. um, I can't believe we are here again, Andy. No coach, no technical director, inflating roster, poor results. Well, it's how it goes, guys. It's sports. Unless you are a rich club that also has, a clear grasp on its future, say like Real Madrid, you're really never facing these issues. Um, you have to build from the ground up, and sometimes you just have to burn it all to see it rise back up again. So I wouldn't. It's sad for me. It's sad because I was so excited when Mourinho was appointed, and I'm so thankful for what he's done for us. And I continue to repeat how important it is to have him leading us. Really, just even from an image perspective. Um, but this is no drama. It's a natural evolution when it comes to football. It's just what happens. Sometimes it goes your way, sometimes it doesn't. Bove is the new Daniele De Rossi. Imagine being coached by your mentor. Yeah, that would be. That's another good thing, right? We'll see, guys. We'll see. There is options. It's not like one could question the technical quality of this team. Fine, but to say that you have no options out there is false. There is options. There is a number of options. Even Mourinho himself said it a number of times this season that, hey, this year we've got a lot of options in the midfield. We have options here. We have options there. We'll see. Doesn't mean that we will see a drastic change, but perhaps even just a steady rise in confidence and in attitude, that would be an improvement over what we saw in the games against Lazio or Milan, where the team just looked flat, and the manager looked like he had no grasp over it anymore, and that's unfortunate. Um, so we will play 4-3-3 with De Rossi, but I think I don't know where that notion comes from, because at Spal he played with a three-man defense. I meant low risk for Daniele De Rossi more so than the club. The club still has a lot to play for, but for him, it's a chance to make a name for himself or be in the same shoes he was in yesterday. Well, I don't know, because this is, it's a big moment for him. I think a lot of people will be watching. I do agree with you from the perspective of a player that returns to his boyhood club. This is huge. At the same time, it's so huge that it may be too grand. Hopefully not. Hopefully he meets the moment. Hopefully the club are able to stand by him. Mourinho did very well. He was sincere in his work. I agree. We are cursed, and we will go back to where we belong. I don't. Okay. I don't know, guys. Maybe I don't read football the way some of you do. I just don't see the tragedy in it. Unless the club is relegated, I don't see a tragedy in this. It's what happens. A manager loses the control of the locker room, or loses the way of conveying something on the pitch, and you have to react to that. Perhaps you could have waited until the summer. The club felt it was time to make a decision. Whether De Rossi is the correct choice in this moment, I guess from an emotional point of view, great. And then comes the pitch, and the pitch, we don't have answers. De Rossi plays with 3-5-2 in Spal. Will it be 3-5-2 now for Roma? Well, I don't believe that he will drastically change what has been going on in terms of tactics. Not, I don't think so. Oh wow, there's a lot of comments. I'm trying to get through them quickly. So, different opinions on Mourinho's constant fight with the referees, but I think his absence on the sideline after expulsions spoke volumes to ownership. MIA in big games like Milan. I don't know if that was the big problem this season. Mourinho was on his best behavior this season. I just think it really comes down to the fact that the team stopped showing up. I don't know what happened after Atalanta, but in the derby, Mourinho was on the sideline in that game, and it was like he was not there. There was no communication between them, and the players kept arguing with each other. And they did the same thing in Milan. They continued to argue with each other. There was no semblance of play. There was no organization. Zalewski was running away from his opponent. It seemed like nobody knew what they were being asked to do, and that's that's unfortunate. That's what happens. That's what happens. Does this mean we are throwing in the towel, basically saying "fuck it" and hope for the best? No, I don't think so. I mean, is it a Hail Mary to appoint an inexperienced coach who used to be a player just to keep the fans at bay? Probably, but I don't think we're folding in the towel. Um, I think had Mourinho stayed, and sort of we saw that the club are happy with just cruising by and hope and hoping for the best, that would have been folding the towel. Here there is still an attempt to just squeeze every last drop out of this team, and then in the summer it's going to be a revolution. There is no more to be done with these players, says Eddie. Cristante is bang average. Pellegrini is bang average. Mancini is bang average. Jesus. Spinazzola is bang average. If you fire Jose, you have to fire them too. Well, as I said before, I think there will be considerations made in the summer with regards to what do you consider your core, and that's what I mentioned the previous episode. I said there is a feeling that there is no identity, because who is, one of the most alarming things about the match against Milan, which I did not comment on the podcast because it was happening as we were recording, was that Andrea Belotti spoke to the media. Mourinho wasn't allowed to speak to the media because of his suspension, but Foti did not speak to the media. He never speaks to the media. Pellegrini did not speak to the media. Mancini did not speak to the media. Andrea Belotti spoke to the media, a guy who, up until a few days ago, had been linked with a move away from Roma. Now, to me, that is mind-blowing that somebody that hardly plays for the club this season, after a good start, he's barely seen any playing time, was asked to go in front of the media and comment on Roma's situation. It just blew my mind. And I think that is something that speaks volumes of who are the leaders in this team, what is the core, who are the core players, what do we do in situations that require somebody to step out in front of the media and discuss what's going on, because Belotti is the last person that should represent you in these situations. So that really stood out to me, and I think it absolutely taps into this lack of identity that I felt in 2018, 2019. I felt in 2012, 2013, and I'm feeling now. Correction, Andy. Pirlo was first assigned as Primavera team manager and then promoted 1 month later. Technically, De Rossi has more experience in comparison. Yes, you're right, Joseph. I immediately remembered that after I said that. But with Pirlo, I think from the start there was a feeling that Juve wanted to build something long term, and it didn't work out for it. They wanted to go in a different direction, right? They wanted to appoint somebody that would take them into the next era. It was the time when Thiago Motta was starting, Gilardino was starting, and Pirlo from that generation also started to do it. And I felt like Juve wanted to go in a long-term direction. Here, Roma are very clear. It's until June, and then we appoint somebody else. With Mourinho gone, do you think we have a chance? First, Frotkins can redeem themselves if they picked up Lucio in the summer. Well, Luciano Spalletti is coaching Italy in the summer, so I don't think that's an option. With Mourinho gone, do you think we have a chance at making a deep run in the Europa League if we get somewhat healthy? But we would have had a chance to go deep into the Europa League as well with Mourinho. I honestly, I don't know. And I said on the podcast, we've been through it. We've been to a final. We felt how much it hurts. And we've seen that the payoff is not great if you lose. The payoff is there if you reach top 4. So if you have to attempt to accomplish something this season, top 4 it is in my book. Mourinho respected Roma in the summer. He did not leave when he got a big contract. We should respect him. I think there was respect, but I also think that there came a moment where there was just no dialogue, and you can't have a healthy workplace if there is no dialogue. So you can argue if there is a lack of if that is a symptom of lack of respect, but I just think that this is a situation that needed to be settled way before that. There should have been a face-to-face between management and Mourinho in the summer. They did not have that. Mourinho went out of his way. He made public the news that he had received offers from Saudi. If you're Roma in that moment, you ask to meet with him. Instead, Roma trusted him. They said, okay, whatever you want, if you're staying, great. They never went and met with him to discuss a long-term future. So both sides kept each other in this uncertainty that is never good, especially if you want to compete for something. So does anybody remember what change Virgil van Dijk brought to what? I don't understand it. There's too many spelling mistakes, my friend. I'm sorry. I can't read a comment that has that many spelling mistakes. Mourinho had. God. What can change tactically at this point? Players trained certain way for 2+ years and an experienced manager. I want to see more entertaining football. Don't think this group can do it. Well, right now, I don't think the Friedkins are aiming for entertaining football. They're aiming for results. They want to see this team pick itself up. I think from an objective standpoint, this is a semi-decent moment. The opponents that you're facing right now are approachable. Obviously, Roma are dealing with a lot of injuries and players being gone, and then we have that terrible trip to Saudi Arabia. For whatever reason, that friendly on the 24th is a nightmare in my book, and the last thing that the club should be doing right now. With upcoming 10 easier matches, plus 2 home matches versus top 4 rivals, reason for Jose sacking beforehand. Well, yeah, you can argue that this was sort of the last moment that the club could take such a decision. So, Andy, will De Rossi bring his own management? Yes. Foti and all of Mourinho's staff members are gone. Salvatore Foti is no longer on the team. De Rossi has his own staff members. Yes, the slate has been cleaned. De Rossi is at Trigoria right now. The training session is about to begin, and with a whole new staff. Best thing was the full stadium every single week. Yes, Paul. Paul, obviously one of our good patrons and somebody who regularly attends games, has to be amazing to even to have been able to enjoy even the more disappointing displays, or at least, or for example, with the lesser sides, right? So with Cremonese, you got a full packed stadium. Same thing for for Bodo or Slavia Praha. No matter who it was, Roma always filled the stadium up, and I don't think that is bound to change, at least for the next few weeks with De Rossi. How much do you know about Spal and Daniele De Rossi play style, Andy? I do not know anything, but his record is not the best. Yeah, his record is not the best. He inherited a very poor team. I think I gave up watching after 2 games. It was horrendous, and in fact, Massimo Oddo, the man who replaced him, was not able to save him, and now they're sitting near the bottom of Serie C. It's not looking good for our good friend Joe Tacopina. Or is he still owner of Spal? I don't know. He's the ASAP Rocky's lawyer, I believe. um, how do you reckon that De Rossi will have the team set up? Any indication? I believe it's, at least in the opening matches. I expect him to continue with a 3-5-2. You don't just walk in and completely alter the way a team plays. It takes time. It takes time, especially when you're just a few days away from playing against Hellas Verona, and it is a must win. It's a must win, absolutely. Monchi damaged us until today. Well, this is it's how it works, right? There are decisions that cost you in the long term, and the Monchi's carte blanche, which was really Pallotta's first and major mistake, was, and the more costly one, the one that cost him his tenure, was giving carte blanche to Monchi. Roma might probably crawl back to its hole. Unfortunately, this will definitely divide the fans. Again, I think it would be a shame if this split up the fans, because this is the exact moment when you should be a fan and when you should be supporting the club. So I will never understand this idea of, hey, something is not going my way, I'm gonna turn my back on the team. What's the use of it? This is football. It's sports. You either win or lose. So by default, you always face moments like these. It's not the first time. It's not the last time. So um, I don't know. Maybe I'm the weird one here. High wages is not the perfect indicator. Tammy, Smalling, Sanchez, Dybala, War. How many minutes they have played this season? No, absolutely. That's all correct, and it all contributes exactly to a situation that Roma must resolve as soon as possible. Is it true free tickets are available for future Roma matches in order to maintain sales? No, what the hell are you talking about? Come on. Or at least I haven't read anything. Despite everything, putting a new coach at this moment can play into our hands because the next series of matches is not so difficult and can encourage to finish the season plus minus on positive note. To me, the only thing that matters right now is not even to see this team playing champagne football, it's just to see this team breathing again, which is not something they've been doing over recent games. And that is something that really pains me, because you always want to see a team react. And Roma showed no fight. When they went down to Milan, they looked helpless. Even when they scored that one goal on the penalty, you never really believe that they're going to come back into it. Let's see. This change can play out similarly like this. Jose Ole change at Manchester United. With the next games are fairly easy to grab a lot of points and gain some confidence after a tough time. There is no excuse now for the players. We all know that this is not a decision that everybody likes. This is not a popular decision. This is actually a very unpopular decision from what I can see. Opinions are split, and opinions will be split. A lot will be said throughout these next few months. We have to see what De Rossi does. From my end, I can only say that I'm grateful for what Mourinho brought to the club. I'm sure we'll get into this in the next podcast episode that we will record later tonight with John. Eternally grateful for what Mourinho did. Whether a change was needed right now, I still don't know. It's still tough for me to say because I've seen these situations in previous seasons, and somehow we've always been able to come out of it. But perhaps this was different. Perhaps things behind the scenes did not feel the same way as they did in previous years. And obviously, you have to add to that Thiago Pinto leaving the club. So there is this, there's general sense of uncertainty with regards to that direction the club are heading in after this season, and those are questions that are all valid, so it's fine. But at this moment in time, I just want to conclude this live stream by saying, if there is a time to support a club, it's in these moments when there is a lot of uncertainty and results are not going your way. It's the most difficult time to be a supporter of a club. And I understand if you follow this team only for Mourinho. I understand that your viewpoint is, hey, losers, time to go back to irrelevance. But I think to the fans of the team, this can be a very good moment as well, because if Daniele De Rossi works out, that's a great romantic return to the club for him. And if it doesn't, nothing ends. Things change. You plan the future. That's the most important thing for Roma right now, is to choose an experienced sporting director that knows the situation, knows how to deal with these restrictions that we're facing, and together with the CEO, together with the owners, can plan a future that has some long-term benefits, and a future that involves Roma still remain competitive and have a clear identity, because I think that's something that we've been lacking this season. As I mentioned before, something broke after Budapest and it never came back, I think. So I think we will end it here, guys. The next podcast episode should be available tomorrow. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do so. And if you would like to support what we do at Roma Press, for the website, for the work that we do on social media, for the podcast, for this YouTube channel, you can become a patron at patreon.com/Roma Press, and you can support us there. It really means the world to us. So, guys, hold on tight. Don't lose hope. This is, This is not the end. It's not a tragedy, and it can actually be an exciting sight to see Daniele De Rossi, one of the great club legends, standing on our sidelines, you know? So at least try and seek the positive in what you initially interpret as negative. In the meantime, as always, I wish Jose Mourinho the best of luck, and we'll see each other real soon. So until then, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, ciao.